everyone, and welcome back to our today's session of 3 days webinar on Rail and Metro Infrastructure 2021. Now I'll invite Mrs. Vinita Srivastav, Executive Director, Railway Board, Ministry of Railway, to present a presentation on international heritage linkages of rail infrastructure. Over to you, Vinita ma'am.
So, a very good morning. I understand that this program is recorded and will be aired repeatedly. So, at present, we have about a few dozen participants, but there will be more watching. Very welcome to a brief 15-20 minute talk on railway infrastructure, international heritage linkages. So, World Heritage in the railway context is begins with the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. This was nothing but an agreement signed by multiple countries in 1972. At that time, railway heritage was perhaps not the prime concern, but of course, the concern was that all our heritage sites like the Taj Mahal, Hampi, the Egypt pyramids, and other such sites have a unique and unrivaled contribution to humanity. So, this heritage does not belong to one community or one nation, but to the world, and the world heritage has to be preserved. The second important pillar came when it was realized that it is not just cultural sites but also man made sites, which are part of the heritage. So, all surviving built environment and natural environment was made a part of this convention. There are two international bodies, ICOMOS and TIKI. COMOS is for monuments and sites, TIKI is for industrial heritage. And both of these international bodies have chapters in India. They look after man made sites as well. In the railway context, another principle that we have to understand is outstanding universal value. So, you go through a lot of technical stuff in the 3 day seminars that are coming forward. But if we sit back sometime and think, what is the outstanding universal value of whatever we do as engineers? How does it enrich our lives? How does it improve the diversity of the planet? And what are the defined criteria which this World Heritage Convention has laid down that this is what is engineering heritage? This is what has to be preserved. So, all of this is enshrined in operational guidelines from 1972 to now. These have been developed over time. The purpose and meaning of all of this is that this heritage, whether it is man made, whether it is naturally occurring, or engineered, it is ours to share, cherish, and respect. And if it disappears, it will be an irreparable loss to humanity. We may lose a lot of institutional memory. I hope this serves as a very brief background because the concepts are a little abstract. I'll move on to the next slide. So, what are outstanding universal values? It sounds like a very high speaking term, but for railway sites, we must realize that all our railway sites are purpose built for transport. They are a mixture, even 200 years ago, when industrial engineering became a thing, the industrial revolution became a reality. Human endeavor, that is the endeavor put in by human engineers, designers, combined with the brilliance and genius of railway engineers, gave special geographies. So you had trains climbing mountains, you had trains traversing over bogs and marshes, tunneling through stone and mountains. And so special geographies, some economy in construction, these were expensive projects, and all of these build up the outstanding universal value of a railway heritage site. We also have many narratives. These are linked with people, with journeys, with the scenery. Sometimes it's very beautiful location for railway heritage site. The evolution of technology. We did not have the same modern means that we have today. And still steam trains, they all managed to run. So how technology involved? And last but not the least, many historical events that occurred parallel to the formation of these heritage lines. From these narratives comes the purpose and meaning, because railways have a meaning for the economy, they have a contribution to the socio-cultural unit of the nation, and so these sites give some purpose and meaning. These again abstract concepts, but as I move into these 7 case studies very quickly, from Russia, Austria, America, England, Australia, Japan, and finally India, I hope that these concepts of engineering contribution, of outstanding universal value, all these will become a little clear in the context of railway infrastructure in World Heritage. And my first example, these slides, I present 7 of them. One is the Moscow Underground. I will draw your attention to the picture on the side of the screen. Where does it look like an underground at all? No, it's like almost a royal palace with beautiful lights, with lovely marble and pillars. And yes, you can see the little train rushing past. So that convinces you that this is indeed an underground metro station. In 1935, Moscow Underground became a showpiece of the revolution. It was a palace of the people. 44 of its 206 stations today are declared as cultural heritage sites. It was a bomb shelter in the world wars, and it has become a thriving underground city. So much so that it has made its place in the minds of the Russian youth, and has inspired cult movies, some books, some gaming. It is very much a part of the culture of Moscow. You can see another visual of the underground station. It doesn't look again like a metro station at all. There's lovely chandeliers, wooden and wrought iron railings, statues, marble, ceilings, arches. So, all of these indicate how a palace for the people was constructed at least 60 to 75 meters beneath the city. And this is a very popular gaming cult, Metro 2033. In the YouTube videos that I have compiled and curated for you, at leisure you can view all these videos, which explain how a metro railway has made its mind into the cultural ethos of the youth of Moscow. My second example here I'd like to share is Semmering Pass in Australia. Karl Ritter von Gega was the builder behind this effort from 1853 to 1882. That's an old picture of the first time the Semmering station took shape. And here you see the beautiful alpine mountains, and perhaps if you look carefully, you can see the viaduct, the aqueduct that was constructed so that a smooth gradient is available for the entire train to pass. This railway was important because this is the first time that railways came up as technical systems. Now, steam worked for over a century here before it was electrified from 1956 to 59. Uh, Today, there is one new tunnel, but the rest of the line is more or less as it was. And a continued operation indicates the sound testimony to engineering genius in the form of the Semmering railway line. This is a recognized UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most popular railway heritage sites in the world. My third example, apologies for going through this quickly, but there's limited time. We had technical issues at the beginning. Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in America, built in 1827 with the transfer of technology from England to America. Now you can imagine the social differences, the cultural and political issues between a colonizer and a colonized regime. But there were also geographic issues of terrain because American terrain was very, very challenging. But still, this happened. This technology transfer happened. How to build the locomotives, how to lay the line. This line itself became a lecture room to thousands because the examples of all the engineering challenges and how they were overcome were physically present. You had to travel the railroad and observe how the bridges, the cuttings, the locomotives were designed to overcome challenges. This resulted in Baltimore becoming the birthplace of American railroading. It has certainly made its place in history. You can see a vintage map of America's first railroad. It has been preserved in the Washington Archives. And what you can see is a book written by Daniel Carroll Toomey. This is about when the Civil War happened in America, and this railroad played a part. Excuse me, I'll just close the door because there's some external noise. Yeah. So the war came by train. What you see also is the curved Thomas Viaduct, which is one of the main enduring features of this line. So the national endeavor in America, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, is again an important world heritage. The fourth example, Liverpool and Manchester, was an international first in 1830. It was a prototype for a wholly locomotive hauled railway. You see, earlier there were the endless rope systems where it was not always a locomotive pulling a train. There were carriages, yes, but it was pulled by a different mechanism. It worked both freight and passenger. The Rainhill trials in 1929 were physical, trial runs for selecting the kind of locomotive that would actually operate well. Interestingly, it is also the site for the first railway casualty because when Stephenson's rocket engine, the winning locomotive, operated, it accidentally and sadly ran over the Member of Parliament William Huskisson. And a lot of good and bad firsts over there. Some pictures, if you can see them clearly on your screen. The Moorish Arch at Edge Hill in Manchester in England, and the Duke of Wellington's carriage in 1831. There were the Wapping tunnels and the Crown tunnels in the Cavendish cutting. Both of these tunnels were separate for the freight and the passenger business. What you can also see is the challenging landscape this line had to negotiate. So the Sandkey Viaduct, the Chatmoss Bogs. The bog is not very stable land, and the locomotive had to pass over a strengthened portion for the track. The Olive Mount Rock Cut, which all had to be cut through for the Stephenson's rocket engine to operate this line. My fifth example from Australia, the Great Zigzag. I'll draw your attention to the map up top. From Lithgow to Sydney, this line operates through many zigzag tracks. There's a bottom track, a top track, then the valley itself. It has undergone many changes since it was built from 1869 to 1910. And it was Australia's first railway to enter the interior, beyond the Blue Mountains. The zigzag was designed by the engineer John Whitten, and because there was not enough money to dig tunnels very deep, he had to go for this engineering innovation. You can see this glorious view if you've been to Australia, the Blue Mountains and why they are named as such. The Shinkansen in Japan in 1964 was perhaps a step ahead in railway world heritage because it was no longer the steam-hauled train, but now a link between Tokyo and Osaka, designed by Hideo Shima. The aerodynamic front of the train gave the name bullet train. It was a high-speed and standard gauge with electric power, a single type of train running repeatedly between these two principal towns, central control, and no trackside signaling. It was a precursor to worldwide heritage services. And so a lot of trains like the ICE came forward afterwards, uh, after the bullet train happened. And this concept of high speed intercity train services took root. There's a fascinating picture of Mount Fuji, which you can see if you travel by the Shinkansen. And last but not the least, our own Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, which is a serial nomination by UNESCO along with the Shimla and the Nilgiri heritage railway systems in India. They are jointly called the Mountain Railways of India. They are British era iconic hill stations, and they were chosen because the cool weather could allow soldiers to escape to recover from their injuries, or the administrators to move to a cooler place in the summers. So, in conclusion, from all the 7 case studies and the initial background I gave you about railway heritage having its place in World Heritage Sites, we find what happens. Why do we celebrate this? You see, when one man climbs a mountain, it is a personal victory for that mountaineer. Wow, he has climbed a mountain. But when a train climbs a mountain, it becomes an engineer's victory. It's a victory for a system which has managed to design, to build, to operate a train up the slope with challenges of weather, of the strength of the land on which the tracks have to be laid, and the people who are working in very arduous circumstances. So, railway heritage celebrates engineering, it celebrates people, and most of all, it allows transport to navigate and overcome geographies which are very, very difficult. For all the people watching here, if whether you are part of the government railway system or outside of it, you certainly belong to and connect with railway heritage in one way or another. And how you can be a part of it? CSR funds are welcome for sponsoring museums, sites, heritage parks, and galleries. In India, there are many archives and documentations which are now coming up. For example, Godrej has its official archive for industrial heritage. Similarly, the National Rail Museum is developing an archive for railway industrial heritage. So anybody with personal records, documents, pictures, and maps which actually give us deeper information of that era, welcome to collaborate in the documentation. We can also jointly celebrate special commemorations, the first time a train started or first time a workshop started its operation. All of these are ways to celebrate this heritage of which we are a part. Thank you very much to Vinodji, Mamta, and Himaniji for letting me participate. Apologies for the initial connection problems. I reached the end of my presentation, and if there are any questions and the network allows, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very insightful presentation. We are grateful for the time and efforts you took to share your thoughts on World Heritage and its relation with railways. I would like to thank everyone for attending this session. A big thank you for taking your precious time to attend our webinar on Railway and Metro Infrastructure 2021. We greatly appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to getting connected with you soon in the second half of today's session. I request you to share your feedback in the chat box. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye bye.